Hi, I am the lovely and talented Jim McCue, and I am talking to the very funny and talented Karith Foster. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you today?
Thanks for coming on. We're doing a kind of a mixed couple of different interviews. One is for WMEX Radio, and then Boston Comedy Festival Radio, and the McCue Report. So, and hopefully this may be our first YouTube video.
Nice.
So, I don't know if you should be honored or nervous about.
I listen. Can we become YouTube sensations from this?
Well, this could be the launch of all that. Karith, in full disclosure, is a good friend of mine, and she started out, not started out, but I first discovered her when she came to the Boston Comedy Festival back in 19.
Uh-huh. When I was 5 and you were 7.
That's correct. That's correct. And you were wonderful then, and you've only gotten better over time. And you were nice enough. The reason I had you on today is you mentioned this movie that you were a part of called "Can We Take a Joke?" And of course, didn't watch it. I said, yeah, 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 and then eventually I did, and I loved it. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I think in the comedy universe, this is going to be such an important topic that comedians need to all of us need to pick up the mantle of. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you got started with Can We Take a Joke, and a little of the background about the movie.
Absolutely. So the producer and director, Ted Balaker, and I became friends when his brother, Matt Balaker, who's a comedian, and I became friends in California, in Los Angeles. He ran a room that I took over when he moved. And I just, we just kind of became, birds of a feather, people with great sense of humor, great ideas, and passionate about being creative, being fun, being smart. And so when Ted and his wife Courtney Balaker, who is the other half of Courchola, the production company they run, mentioned they had this short film they were looking for comedians to give some feedback on. They thought I'd be great because they knew I performed at a lot of colleges, and comedy wise, and did speaking. So they asked me to come in and just say a few words about some incidents that have been happening around college campuses over the past few years of outrage, of people who were protesting and getting upset over things that revolved around comedy. And, as you and I both know, that the only rule in comedy is you're supposed to be funny.
Right, right.
We got the memo. But a lot of audience members haven't. They didn't. And so what was made it even more interesting was that the fact that this was happening on college campuses, which are supposed to be this last bastion of
Right.
liberal expression, before
And
you
free
get out into
thought.
the world. Right. Free thought, being able to express yourself, a place where you hear different ideas, even if you don't agree with it, at least you're exposed to it. But, what happened wasn't just, people were upset and offended. Like there were actual physical attacks. There were protests. There was vitriol. And so the idea for the film really sparked. It was the brainchild of Greg Lukianoff, who is the CEO of the FIRE organization, which stands for the Freedom of Individual Rights and Expression. And he, himself has an ACLU background. He's a lawyer. And for several years, he was representing students on campus who, for whatever reason, the administration didn't like what they were doing, and they were fighting for their First Amendment rights, the right to free speech, the right to express the freedom of expression. What had since happened in the past few years, it kind of switched, flip-flopped, and now he's representing professors,
Wow.
administrators, because the students have turned against them because they don't like something that's being said. And this was my first introduction, I'll be honest, to,
Yeah.
words like safe space and trigger warnings, because,
Yeah.
we didn't have that when I was back in school. As you learned what you learned, and everybody was kind of allowed to say what they needed to say.
My first experience with being not a good act for colleges was, I did one of these conventions they have, and I talk to people in the audience, and usually it's people that are from the working world. They make fun of their relationship or what they do for a living.
Right.
And so in the college thing, what I ended up doing was asking what their majors were, and and made fun of the fact that a lot of them were not ever going to make a living and were never going to move, and it went well. They all laughed.
Right.
And thank God this is before social media, because I wasn't crucified on Twitter. But I did have a student activity administrator come around to the booth and say, I was very offended by what you said, that you made fun of people's majors. They're spending a lot of money. And I said, oh, I don't care if you're offended. She said, what? I go, I don't care at all. I go, am I supposed to do something with that, or is that supposed to empower you? Because I don't care. And she stormed off. But if I had done that yesterday, there would have been like an uprising, because all I was just trying to be funny. And I didn't know, I really didn't, at the time, I didn't even get my mind around where this was all going. I just knew I didn't understand. Like, now first of all, I'm horrible standing in the booth because people come up and they talk to you, and now I feel like a shoe salesman. Yeah, you're like, hi, I'm a comedian. I'm for sale. You could block hire me. You know what I mean? It's just horrible, and you want to, and now whatever. So, but then it's now progressed, and I knew then I was never going to be the guy for colleges. I was already too old for it, and not what they were looking for.
Right.
And it wasn't a good fit for us, me or them, and blah blah blah. But now I'm seeing, and that was one of my first things. Was I thought, boy, if I could ever get funny enough and intellectual enough that I could work colleges, wouldn't that be the be all end all? And I never did get intellectual enough, but it seems like there's no opportunity for that. That they're not looking for that.
It's so sad. It's actually really sad. It's sad for the state of comedy. It's sad for comedians who, for a lot of us, that was kind of my big break into comedy as far as making money, like real money.
Right.
Where I wasn't just, featuring at some, one-nighter in the tri-state area. It was an opportunity to have a larger audience, to get an audience. I mean, that's how so many people built their careers, like Dane Cook,
Right, correct.
You go to these college campuses, you get fans who stick with you throughout your career, and that's how you make a name for yourself. And so, for a lot of comedians, going to a college campus is not just, part of their, goals. It's part of helping formulate their career, their lasting career.
Right. You build your audience, and you also, it affords you enough money to survive long enough to get everything else going. The acting and the whatever.
Right. But there are people that would come up to, other comics and say, and I would even have this say, well, you can't talk about this. Try to be careful about that. And it's like, okay, do you go up to any other person and tell them how to do their job? And the answer is no. If you're not in the industry, if you're not their boss, don't do that. Like, you hired me to do what I do best. I know funny.
Right,
okay?
Right.
You don't get to dictate what is funny and what isn't. You do that whether you laugh or not, but not by giving me rules and regulations.
Right. I looked up a couple of quotes. They had a great quote by George Carlin. He said, "Political correctness is fascism dressed up as manners." And some of the great quotes I like from the movie were, I wish I could quote whoever said this, and maybe you could help me with this. But someone said, it's like, are we going to have society judge what can be said by the most sensitive person in society?
Right.
In other words, it's okay to be offended, but if I'm offended, does that give me the instant right to shut down anything you're saying mid-sentence? You can go on. You can go on social media and complain about the restaurant you just ate at, but you don't go into the kitchen and slap the pan out of the cook's hand because you're offended by where his onions came from.
Exactly. That's such a valid point. For so many. Hold on, I just lost my train of thought. But for so many people, the movie isn't saying you can't have an opinion. The movie is saying you can't be offended. Of course you can. That's your right.
Right.
The matter at question is, just because you don't like something doesn't mean you should squash it so that other people can't hear it or experience it. And there was a very interesting review by the New York Times that I found rather disturbing, because what they said was it was very one-sided, the film, which I don't really think it is if you're paying attention to it. It's just giving you the opportunity to see what's happening. but they said, this is comedians, whining. They actually said whining
Yeah.
about what's happening with their careers and not being able to be as obnoxious as they want to be. And that's hardly the case,
Huh.
you know. And Ted Balaker, the producer and director of the film, makes a really great point. What comic do you know has actually made a full, like, strong career being an ass, being a jerk, being racist and bigoted and sexist, truly, not making it a joke, not making it
Right.
of, the hypocrisy that's happening in the world.
Right.
There are none, because that's not funny.
Right.
You won't have a career that sustains that
The
type of.
market for their comedy will be zero, so they will not,
Exactly.
yeah. I think that's absolutely true and accurate. I think that I think it was Jimmy Norton. They showed a bit of him on stage saying, it's not only do comedians are developing their art live on stage. It's not finished all the time. Sometimes you have an idea, and I was out in Burbank, and I was talking to a comedian and a friend of mine, and he was trying to do a joke about something about racism and the term blackened fish in a restaurant. And it wasn't funny at all. I was like, "Oh, that's just horrible." But maybe someday he can make that into
Right.
something funny. I don't know, but you can't know how to make it funny. You can't fix it until you almost have to be on your feet in front of an audience. And
That's
we're
the only way you can do comedy.
right. So
Please,
the first time you say it, maybe it is offensive. Maybe but your intent in your heart is not to be
right.
offensive.
You got to work it out.
It's to
But
say
there's no
something
other way to
different.
do comedy. It has to be in front of a live audience. Otherwise, you're not going to know how anybody reacts to it. You have to try things out. This is the only art that you have to actually, like, have people there to witness it, to make it greater.
Right.
You can't practice it at home. Lisa Lampanelli used to say, you can't practice this at home, with a hairbrush in front of your mirror. You
Right.
have to be in front of people. Otherwise, you never know what works and what doesn't. Sure, it
Right.
can amuse the hell out of you forever,
Right.
but this isn't about you.
Right. 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 Wow. And it's amazing when they talk. They do a great job of talking about Lenny Bruce and
Man,
his epic battle against censorship. And at his time, it was the use of what was considered profane language,
yeah,
which was coming from the government. The government was going to tell you what you could and couldn't say. But now, you don't even have the due process that Lenny Bruce was afforded. You can't go to a court of public opinion for 10 months and fight for your right to uh, grow on stage. I mean, they're gonna go right out on Twitter and
oh,
end you.
forget it.
And
That I mean that. One of the best examples of this, this massacring that happens now on social media was Justine Sacco, the woman who's not even a comedian. She
right,
was a PR person, and she made a very, looking back, I'm sure she didn't. Well, I know she didn't even mean it the way that it came out. It was
right,
supposed to be a point of, bringing people to social consciousness, and what she thought was a joke.
right.
I'll remark. Justine Sacco was a woman who was publicly shamed
I remember you.
for making a joke about going to Africa and saying, "I'm going to South Africa. Hope I don't get AIDS. Just kidding. I'm white."
Right,
Well, she had like something like she didn't even have 200 Twitter followers.
right.
Someone saw it, retweeted it. It got to the hands of people who, didn't
I would go
get
through my 200 friends and find out
right who the hell
who
it was
destroyed
that
my
ruined my
life.
life.
I
And
would individually ask them.
and we're not perfect.
Right,
John Roush had the best quote I think from the movie. We're all this mixture of stupidity and imperfection and greatness, so that we all of us are. And that's what happened. And I mean, her life was destroyed for less than 140 characters.
it's so like I'm trying. All of us. I mean, I am not famous. I am not well known. But I am making a living in comedy, but I'm tweeting out jokes every day. And it's only a matter of time before I really say something stupid. And I have. I just haven't been famous enough for anyone to care. The other
Right.
thing
Like Gilbert.
the other thing about Twitter is it doesn't have a special emoticon for irony or sarcasm. So if you're trying to be ironic, and there are many people who are offended all the time, irony is not their strong suit.
No.
And sarcasm, not everyone has the sarcasm gene, or
No.
knows me well enough to know that I do. So,
Exactly.
Oh gosh.
That's why it's so hard. Comedy is so, the beauty and almost the fatality of it is subjective.
Right.
And I created a program called the Humor Initiative that I take to colleges and universities about why it's important to have humor, how powerful it is, what an incredible tool it is, not just for society, but for bringing us together, for educating us, and how, comedy's been used for centuries. I mean, centuries to get, to speak out about injustices and things that are happening in society and politics and, and poke fun at life. And so many people now they can't even go there. They haven't even recognized that that's part of what comedy is about. And, what, one of the things I hate is that I've had to, and I am a stand-up comedian without question. I'm also a speaker. But I have had to change on my website the term comedian to humorist because, as one friend said, the difference between a comedian and a humorist is a zero in their paycheck.
Right.
And it's true. And the problem is there's so many people who don't respect comedians because they think that we just get on stage and tell dick jokes. And,
right.
Or in my case, it would be period jokes,
right.
because that's what all women do, which is ridiculous.
Or they tell dick jokes, period.
Very good.
If you want to make that a punctuation. Send your check for Karith to that one too.
Yes. But so few people, because I have a diversity program that I do. I have an empowerment program, and I use comedy in it or use humor in it. Sometimes that scares people off because they're like, oh, well, we can't take it seriously. Absolutely not. This is to break out of the box of the boring fucking lectures that most people have been given at work and at school and whatever. Comedy is the leveling field to get everybody relaxed enough to hear the message, to absorb it, to remember it. I mean, everybody remembers their favorite professor or teacher. They were the ones who made them laugh.
Right.
They're the ones who, made a subject interesting.
And how are they receiving this in colleges? Are they?
Oh, they love
Are you getting?
it.
You're not getting
No.
blowback on this?
No.
Okay.
No, because they get it, and I set the tone, and I have the opportunity to do that. Because I have the knowledge,
right?
But I make sure that everybody understands where I'm coming from. I think that's huge.
For those of you who are listening, we're talking to a very funny comedian, my good friend Karith Foster. So find her on Google, and where else can they find you, Karith?
Karith.com. There aren't too many Kariths out there.
Okay, I just got to remember to say that once in a while because people are listening to two people talk audio and they don't know. You touched on something earlier that I thought. I was watching some things with like Gilbert Gottfried was in the movie, and he's talking about like, I'm not sure if he said this in the movie, but I did hear him say this. Like if you're a fan of Charlie Chaplin, here's a guy who was the Little Tramp was a homeless guy. And didn't we all empathize with the plight of the homeless person through Charlie Chaplin? But if we looked through today's prism, would he be just considered someone who's making fun of the homeless?
Oh, probably.
Would the movie be shut down and shouted down? And the Marx Brothers, I think, was another example that he used. You have a guy who's smoking cigars. You have a guy that's doesn't speak.
Right.
So is that
he's a mute. They make fun of Italians. They make fun of
right.
I mean, and even more modern times, right?
Yeah.
Mel Brooks.
I just posted Mel Brooks saying that he could not have made Blazing Saddles today, and I don't think he could have made Young Frankenstein. By the way,
probably not. No.
I mean, even more modern, could they have made Airplane today? Yeah, I don't think so. I think
there's no way.
There's just no way because people. Sometimes what makes you laugh is that it's totally politically incorrect. It's so horribly wrong that you laugh. You're like, oh my, did they just do that? It's the act of doing the most politically incorrect thing.
Well,
Or how about Archie Bunker? Was
oh,
Archie
forget
Bunker
it.
what?
And Archie Bunker, the whole point of Archie Bunker was to show the absurdity of people who are bigoted and racist and misogynists.
And if you couldn't make a fool out of Archie Bunker's flawed logic,
Mm-hmm.
could we have looked at all those topics in everyone's living room? There was 3 channels back then, and
Yeah.
that launched the Jeffersons,
The
which talked
Jefferson.
about all kinds of political things. Maude, which
Yep.
if you're a feminist and you didn't think Maude was changed the world in the 70s, you're crazy.
Yep.
And
Yep.
could they have talked about all those things and had all of that
No.
came through a very it's just crazy that you would stop the message and the messenger before you actually realize they're making people laugh and look at social issues at the same time.
That's the power of comedy. That's why it is so important that it can't die. That's why it's so important that it can't be squashed. That's why it's so important that people who get on these self-righteous horses, yes, have your voice, okay? But don't try to stifle someone else's. There are a ton of people out there who say stuff I don't want to hear.
Right.
Donald Trump, there's the things that has come out of his mouth, and he's not alone, but he has the right to say it. He also has the right to the consequences, and that's the thing, Everybody, there are consequences, regardless.
Right.
But you have to own them, like you did with the lady at the booth.
Right.
Yeah, I said that.
I never worked at
colleges
colleges again.
I own that. I said that. We're
Follow my
supposed to
path,
grovel and apologize
learn
for
through Jim
being who
McCue.
you are.
Learn through Jim McCue how to never work colleges again. Speak your mind. Stand up for yourself. So funny. Oh man, it's so
But
true though.
It's kind of out of control, and my biggest issue with it is that I feel like there's a real lack of personal responsibility.
Yeah.
On everyone's part. People don't want to be responsible for what they say. They don't want to be responsible for how they feel. And my problem is with people who say, well, you made me feel this way. And I know for me, it's come with maturity.
Yeah.
Understanding that I'm the only one responsible, for my happiness.
Right.
But also for how I take on other things, how other things affect me. Yeah. I'm the only one responsible for that. And while it's very frightening sometimes to have that realization, it's also incredibly empowering. And I think a lot of people miss that point. So when you say you make me feel this way, or you made me upset, you did this to me, A, you're being a victim.
Yeah.
B, you're also not taking responsibility. It's a lot easier to blame someone else than, yourself.
Right. I found that last comedian overserved me with sarcasm. And it triggered an alertness in my safe space. It's like, go back to your safe space and just tape the windows up.
And this, this happened. Everybody has had something happen to them.
Of course.
Everyone.
It's called being human.
Exactly. It doesn't matter your color or your sexuality or your race, your ethnicity, your religion. Everybody has had something happen to them. And you get to decide whether that's going to build you up or destroy you.
And why can't that be what connects us instead of what divides us? Why can't it be, look, every one of us has had everyone who hasn't had their feelings hurt, please leave the room. No one's leaving. And also, I also think it's completely unfair that, comedians are on a tightrope up there trying to make it look easy. Something happens, whatever, a heckler, and they respond. And in that moment, they can be held, they can be destroyed forever. It's just too high a standard for,
I think comedy should be the most respected art on this planet. And not because I am one, but because I know firsthand what a vulnerable art form it is. It's the most vulnerable art form I believe exists. You're not up there with other people, right? It's all you. It's your thoughts, your words, your body, your face, your, imagination. It's your everything for complete acceptance or complete rejection. It is so vulnerable. You don't have a script. You may have somebody helping you write, but not many people have that until they get to a certain level.
Right.
So it's just, it really, it does pain me that people don't respect it more as they should.
Well, I think this freedom of speech thing, I mean, you're either all in or you're not. I mean, because I
Yeah,
find things offensive, um, but I've got to defend somebody's right to offend me in order for me, to be an idiot sometimes, and probably more than not,
exactly.
you know.
Exactly. And please, I think we all know that people are going to say things. We're married, you know?
Yeah,
People
yeah,
are gonna say things you don't like. You don't just leave because somebody said something you don't like. You can't. Like, that just happens. I have toddlers. They say shit I don't like all the time.
right, correct.
So what do I do? You offended mommy. I go sit in the closet. No. You deal with it.
All right. Well, listen, Karith, thanks so much for giving me some of your time. I
Absolutely.
appreciate it as always. I'm going to try my best to get this to be part of the Boston Comedy Festival this year, and I think it's a movie worth seeing. If you can, I don't know where they can find it. Maybe
They
you can
can
help.
find it. I will tell you. They can
Yes.
find it on iTunes Movies.
Okay.
Okay. It's also available on video on demand. So just about like every cable outlet has a video on demand. You know, Cox, Verizon, FiOS, DirecTV. Video. It's video on demand. So it pretty much it was
It's
only in
called
theaters.
"Can We Take a Joke?"
Can we take a joke? And as my husband said, if he'd made it, it would have been the shortest movie ever. It just would have been a series of people going, no, nope,
Nope.
no.
Well, I was thinking, like, what would be the if comedy was completely ruled by political correctness and what could offend people? It'd be like, hey, did you ever notice things? Who are these people that do stuff? I was watching the news the other day, but I'll let you draw your own conclusions. A guy on the subway said something the other day, but I don't want to get into it.
I can't share it with you right now. See me after the show and I'll whisper it to you.
I think you and I have to do a short of 3 completely innocuous, unoffensive comedians. You will
That would
play
be
one, I'll play another.
awesome.
When you're up at the festival, I say we do our short
That would be
because I have the
hysterical.
Davis Square Theater, and we'll do 3 comedians being completely politically correct and unoffensive.
That would be so great.
All right, Karith, once again, tell everybody where they can find your social media and come see your performances and when you're speaking. And
Absolutely. So my website is karith.com, and I'll spell that. That's Karith. I'm on Twitter as Karith Foster, at Karith Foster. And I have a Facebook fan page, which is, ready and willing to take people. Have
awesome.
people join, add me. So yeah, and thank you. Thank you for this platform and this opportunity and for sharing about this really great movie. And it's not just for comedians. This is something
For
that
everybody.
should be interested in and find value in. And it's a cause that we can't just let slide by. Like, it's really important. This is about our
Yeah,
rights.
you need to let the idiots, not just comedians, but people that have bad opinions. I think it's better to have them in the public square than
Hell yeah. Then
meeting
going
behind
underground and
meeting
doing
in the
stuff.
barn. You know what I mean?
Even
It's
more
not.
dangerous.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
And
We
also,
may not
it gives you the opportunity to counter their opinion at some platform.
exactly.
And suddenly you hope that logic will get in somewhere, or in the arena of ideas, the best opinions will be embraced by more people. You hope.
Exactly. How do
And
you meet hate speech with more speech?
right.
That's what you have to do. You can't shut people down. You just have to, you have to serve it with more.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Karith Foster. You're the best. Appreciate it.